We got NFL free agents, frenzies, and spring practice for Longhorn football. Pretty good Tuesday here on Game Time. And we'll take your thoughts. 512-834-1027. That's 512-834-1027. All right, so day one, legal tampering period, the oxymoron that it is. Whirlwind moves expected. Overall, Jack, by my count, there were more than 50 notable moves. Cap-rich teams like the Raiders, Panthers, and Chiefs making bold splashes. Total agreed-to spending from teams to players exceeded $1.5 billion. Reported contracts and agreements over 24 hours. That's pretty good. Well, that reflects a couple things. A market flush with cash. The salary cap projected to rise to over $300 million in 2026. That's double it was 10 years ago. Double. But let's be real. Investing huge dollars in free agency, not usually recommended. A recommended course of building a championship roster. You know, those are not better players hitting the market, I don't think, Jack, than they were 5 years ago. Teams just have more money to spend. And that's the way this should work. I mean, the collective bargaining agreement says we share all revenues 50-50, and as the revenues rise, players are going to make more money. Mm-hmm. The cap, as we said, will hit over $300 million. That's twice what it was 10 years ago. It's more than $100 million more now than it was 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, they were flush with cash. That's good for the players. But if you consider looking 30,000 feet down on this from what went on yesterday, Jack, top contracts reported and committed on day one. The Titans committed to over $270 million in guarantees yesterday, Tennessee. The Raiders, who had the most to spend ever, by the way, entering free agency, agreed to nearly $200 million in deals yesterday. Commanders were third at $147. Colts, Giants, Panthers, and Saints. You know what those 8 teams had in common? They stunk last year. Combined to go 37-82 last season. So, oh boy. The Seahawks, who just won the Super Bowl, spent about $20 million yesterday. They re-signed Rashid Shaheed. But, you know, let's be fair. The Seahawks just won the Super Bowl, but they did spend over $100 million in free agency last offseason to take a well-built roster and put it over the top. And, you know, yes, it was a strong push for the Patriots last year with Mike Vrabel and their spending in general. The biggest spenders in the early days of the league year, you know, typically it's a terrible roster. They have to add players.
Right.
They don't have any good players. But, you know, let's be fair. If Cam Ward is the real deal in Tennessee, or Fernando Mendoza is a quick learner and a strong draft pick at the top for Vegas, as New England showed you, things can turn pretty quickly. But in the NFL, we know it centers around the quarterback and the head coach. If you have both of those, you can be good quickly. Drake May's rise with Mike Vrabel at the helm is the main reason, and there was some good fortune there for the Patriots in a down AFC, and injuries helped them. But still, to go from 4 wins to the Super Bowl, you got to credit the young quarterback's rise and the head coach. In Seattle, that's just a really, really well-built roster, and I'm pretty sure they can navigate the loss of Ken Walker, which was one of the bigger deals of yesterday. But, you know, you still don't want to – look, these are bad teams spending money they have to spend, essentially. We'll find out how this plays out. That's for all these teams, all 32, but the team spending, that's a lot of money, $1.5 billion in total contracts, but – you know, Tennessee in the Houston Texans division, but really going to center around Cam Ward and Fernando Mendoza. If those guys are good, and Robert Saleh can be kind of the Mike Vrabel there, kind of similar coach. In Vegas, they've hired Clint Kubiak, and they've spent a ton of money. We'll see. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah, I mean, I think for talent-depleted rosters, it's always good to bring in more talented players than you had. I think some of the price points that they inked,
those are always high. First day's always the most, and players get rich on day one.
That's right. But again, I mean, if Fernando Mendoza can come in and be productive in his rookie year, if Cam Ward is the real deal, like you said, then it kind of washes away.
Yeah, well, and I don't.
If they can add 5 games of their win total, you're going to feel a lot better about some of those numbers.
Well, and I don't. You know, when you talk about the Raiders set the market at center with Tyler Lindenbaum. The Texans fans are like, we get him. Well, come on. The guy just got $20-30 million a year to play center.
Exactly.
But if you're bringing in Fernando Mendoza, he's on a rookie deal to bring in a veteran, but he's 25 years old, a center that can anchor the middle of your offensive line and work with your young quarterback. I don't hate that. I mean, you have to overspend. Guess who else the Raiders overspent for that hurt the Cowboys? Nakobe Dean. Nakobe Dean was a linebacker that the Cowboys were after, and by all accounts, it was down to the Cowboys and the Raiders just had more money to spend. And that's the second big defensive potential acquisition the Cowboys missed out on because they weren't willing to give a second first-round pick to get Max Crosby, and time will tell. The Ravens were, but now the Raiders had more to spend, and Nakobe Dean is going to go to the Raiders then play linebacker there, not for the Cowboys. And the Cowboys did not really sign a linebacker yesterday in their work. So it's one thing to want to be aggressive. Remember, Jerry Jones is on the record going to bust the budget. Well, it was the Ravens that busted the budget to bring in Max Crosby. But I also question the Ravens. If you're the Ravens and you give up 2 first-round draft picks, this year's and next year's 14th overall, which is where you get your cheap labor to bring in Max Crosby. I understand why they're doing it, but you also let your all-pro center leave, Tyler Lindenbaum. You let 2 tight ends walk out the door, Isaiah Likely and Charles Kolar went to the Chargers. They lost key pieces, and so you're pretty heavy at the top. Ravens the Cowboys are trying to maintain both, rebuild the defense within the vision and the likeness of the new defensive coordinator, but at the same time not keep those draft picks as much as possible to try to bring in some young players too. Ravens, they're going for it, but when you lose the amount of ammo they lost, does that offset the Max Crosby? You lose an all-pro center, you lose 2 really good tight ends, you're down to Mark Andrews, your only tight end. You still don't really have great wide receivers for Lamar Jackson.
No.
And your offensive line is much lesser.
Yeah, it's an interesting spot that they find themselves in because I think on the offensive line, Lamar Jackson's going to have to make do. If anyone's a scrambler, it's him, right? But
Derrick Henry's in his early 30s now.
I don't love who he's throwing to at all. Never have.
Well, and again, I paralleled the Cowboys and Ravens. They're in similar spots. Yeah. Cowboys are trying to toe the line of rebuilding the defense, but stick to some of those draft picks. The Ravens said, F the picks, man. Take them both.
It's funny. There's a conspiracy going around that old John Harbaugh signed Mark Andrews to that big deal so that he could get
Isaiah Likely
in free agency.
Well, there he is.
He did it.
I don't think John Harbaugh knew he was going to get fired this year going into the year, but he did. But the day one overview, bigger than that, the running backs and wide receivers dominated several ball carriers. Kenneth Walker III, Travis Etienne landing in new spots. The quarterbacks, of course, with Malik Willis and then the defense. But so the biggest headlines, buzzworthy for me. Has to be the Super Bowl MVP Ken Walker to the Chiefs on a 3-year deal. We had talked about Andy Reid and company targeting maybe Jeremiah Love in the draft with the 9th pick, Jack, but that's off the table now. Instead, they strike to pair Walker with Patrick Mahomes and help improve the game's worst rushing offense in 2025. You realize the Chiefs didn't have a single running back that averaged over 4 yards a carry last year, which kind of tells you their plight. They won all those one-score games the year previous and made the Super Bowl, but man, it was leaking. And you got to be able to run the football. And you can't put that much on your quarterback. Travis Etienne, meanwhile, this is one I question going to the Saints. That doesn't seem like a fit, but the Saints are trying to go for it here a little bit. That's your team, Saints in the south of the NFC.
It's my playoff pick for the NFC South.
And by the way, I like Ken Walker. You had to spend, this is why the Texans went and got David Montgomery on a more affordable deal ahead of it with a trade, because Ken Walker was going to set the market, and it's a $45 million 3-year deal. It's a lot of money for a running back, but Ken Walker's a good player. Travis Etienne, and not very good between the tackles. But the Saints want a replacement for Alvin Kamara is essentially what they're doing there. Tyler Algier landed in Arizona. That means Bijan Robinson at this point is kind of a solo back, which Longhorn fans have been longing for. And I like this signing. Kenneth Gainwell is going to head to Tampa to play for the Buccaneers. Kenneth Gainwell was the leading receiver for the Steelers last year, and they're going to let Rachaad White go. So it's going to be a Bucky Irving, Kenneth Gainwell duo in Tampa. But we'll get to that Mike Evans departure. And why everybody loves it for the 49ers. I'm questioning that, and I understand what the Buccaneers are doing. We'll get to that. But the quarterback shakeup, Malik Willis, 3-year deal. We wondered, Jeff Hafley coming in from Green Bay with the new general manager who came from Green Bay, if they like Malik Willis because they got to see him for 2 or 3 years up close, then that would tell you something about Malik Willis, and they signed him yesterday after releasing Tua. We kind of thought Geno Smith might be their call. That was going to tell me about Malik Willis, but Jeff Hafley likes the quarterback. But when you're releasing Tua Tagovailoa and taking on a $99 million cap hit, the largest in NFL history, this pick of Malik Willis better be right, because Hafley won't be there long.
Yeah.
If you get that wrong and you just did it because of familiarity or whatever, but Hafley is a no-nonsense guy. You got to see that guy play quarterback behind Jordan Love for 2 seasons and go against him. Mm-hmm. I think he's got some keen insights that would tell you that they feel like Quinn Ewers will be the backup, Malik Willis will be the starter in Miami.
Yeah, I think that's right. You spent the money to make that the case. You are you have about $180 million all told tied up at the quarterback position right now.
Oh.
So we'll see.
Malik better be good.
Yeah.
Or Quinn's going to be your cheap car alternative without a doubt. And then there's the Mike Evans departure, which made a lot of headlines because he's a Hall of Famer. I mean, Mike Evans, when he retires, a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Sure.
But here's my question. The Buccaneers, remember, they drafted Emeka Egbuka in the first round last year, premium draft capital, top 20 pick.
I have no issue with Tampa moving on here.
And they drafted Jalen McMillan from Washington with a premium draft pick the year before.
Yeah, they got Tez Johnson, that kid from
They got
North
Tez
Carolina.
Johnson from Oregon. They've got
Oh yeah, he did go to Oregon.
Oregon. The Tez, I saw him at the Senior
Yeah.
Bowl a couple Seniors Bowls ago. Tez Johnson, and they have what's the kid? There's one other receiver there that's still running.
Chris Godwin's still
Chris Godwin's still there. So this was on the wall. They're going to say all the right things about PR. Well, he's the one we wanted to retire a Buccaneer. But here's my question for the 49ers. Juwan Jennings is leaving. Ricky Pearsall hasn't developed. You're planning on Mike Evans coming in at 33 years old and being your wide receiver one? Like the go-to guy? Maybe. But if you were bringing him in like the Seahawks and the Rams, right? They have Puka Nacua. And they brought in Devontae Adams to be the second guy. And he's in his early 30s, too, and a great player. Those two together are wicked. Puka, Jackson Smith and Jigba with Cooper Kupp, an aging receiver. I like it. But then, until the next move comes, Kyle Shanahan is saying that Mike Evans is our one. I don't know if I like that. I like him as a two.
Yeah.
I don't like him as the wide receiver one. Where Tampa was kind of planning for this the last couple drafts, and the guy's 33 years old. And when's the last time you saw a 33-year-old receiver be wide receiver one and be productive? If you add another piece and he can be the second guy, I get it in San Francisco. In this regard, I don't know. That's an old, aging team.
Yeah, Ricky Pearsall hadn't totally hit, and I mean he's had a lot of injury
and
issues.
Juwan Jennings is a free agent.
Juwan Jennings is a free agent. They're probably
Brandon
not going to
Ayuk's
have
gone.
George Kittle all year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're banking on a 33-year-old. I know within the scheme and the
he's still good.
What Kyle Shanahan's all about, that's a perfect number one receiver, but he's 33. Again, if it was Puka with Devontae Adams, if it was Jackson Smith with Cooper Kupp, I see it. And look, Mike Evans is first ballot Texas A&M guy, but but there could be other moves. They could try to address a receiver in the draft, whatnot. But yeah, that's interesting to me. Meanwhile, Tampa I think will be fine bringing in Kenneth Gainwell. They still have good young receivers, and Egbuka I think is going to be a star for them to replace Mike Evans. But time will tell. That's what free agency is all about. So we'll talk about it. But top remaining free agents, Jack, there are plenty. Trey Hendricks that hadn't signed yet. Devin Lloyd hasn't signed yet. That's one of the top corners on the market. Tariq Woolen hasn't signed. Romeo Dobbs is out there. There's good players. So day two, Kyler Murray is still yet to find a spot. So we'll watch all that over the next 24 hours.
Yeah, man. What's Arizona going to do at quarterback? They signed Gardner Minshew.
Geno Smith.
I guess it has to be. It
Yeah.
basically has to be.
Minnesota wants to get in on that Kyler Murray deal. So we'll talk quarterbacks coming up. Texas Spring Practice, Practice 1. Arch Manning out there. Cam Coleman, 40-plus new players, a new defensive coordinator. We're from Sark coming next.